Hi, this is Adam from Sound Mana here to share with you my custom audio effect rack using Ableton Live's Echo and other audio effects. Alright, let's check it out. Now that we got a sense of what this audio effect rack can do, let's check out how we can build it. Alright, so before we get into building a custom audio effect rack, let's just quickly open up the Sound Mana Echo insert. So this is our audio effect rack. You can double click to fold it, double click to open it up. Here we have our chain view, and then we have our detail view. The detail view is where we can see the echo, the auto filter, and the auto pan. Now, what we see here are these little green markers. And for the chance that you haven't checked out Ableton Live's audio effect racks, you'll notice in the audio effects, we have a whole category of different audio effects. Maybe you have, and maybe you've noticed these green markers. And you're like, why? I can't touch this parameter, it doesn't move. Well, that's saying that this parameter has been mapped to a macro. Therefore, you will not be able to move it or touch it unless you go to the macro that it is assigned to. Excuse me. Now, for any reason you need to unmap a macro for your own needs, you can simply right click on that parameter and unmap it, and this will allow you to do that. So that is how that works. And then if you want to go back, you can map it or Command Z or undo it to create that. So these are the movements that we have. I'm going to just quickly kind of define what we got going on here and what to look at before we deconstruct and build this again. So we have our dry wet, right? The dry wet is determining the balance between the signal that is not being processed by the echo, known as the dry signal, and the signal that's being affected by the echo, known as the wet signal. Right now, we have about 51% wet signal, and then that means the rest would be the dry signal. At 0, we will not hear anything. Feedback is the length of the delay, so how long the delay will last for. And this is where this particular audio effect is so awesome compared to the other delays. The other delays are not going to go up to 150%. And if you want to note something down, the hotspot for me is about 110%. That's where you're going to start getting this kind of distorted repetition. It's feeding back into itself so much, it starts to get hotter and louder and more aggressive. So let's just kind of check out the feedback and see how it feels. And like I said, if you want to get that kind of distorted feel, it's emulating a tape delay, you're going to want to bring it past about 110%. Of course, go all the way up and then back it off. And then if you want it to completely go away, just drop it down. Awesome. The next parameter that I like to really mess with, this is where we get that pitch modulation. So essentially, the faster the delay, the higher the pitch, and the lower the delay, the lower the pitch. The longer the delay, the lower the pitch. And one thing that you'll notice, I mean, we'll start building this together. There's two modes. We have the sync mode, and we have the time mode, which is measured in milliseconds to seconds. Sync mode will always be in sync. So whatever value you are at, whatever BPM you are at, that delay time will remain the same. And what happens with the sync is when you change it, you get like, the pitch jumps a little bit more. So I'm going to just turn up this feedback. So you might decide that you actually like the action of the sync. Depending on what you need or what you want, you might prefer one over the other. The time, the reason I'm using the time is you get more of a steady rise and fall in pitch. It's not going to just jump to one pitch to another. So let's check out that. I'm going to turn up my feedback so it rings out. I'm going to go around 100%. Okay, and that is why I like to work with the time. So I map those parameters by right-clicking and mapping it to macros, which we're going to see shortly. But first, I'm just kind of going through these different parameters so we can understand. Before moving away from the echo, the last parameter that I map to is the reverb, which I like to use to just kind of add even more space and time to my sound, especially when it starts getting a little harsher with the more aggressive feedbacks. Okay, great. So that is the 4 parameters that I'm working with on my echo, and when I rebuild this thing, you'll see how it's working. I then put an auto filter and I'm mapping my frequency. And my frequency, I like to use a high pass filter just because I feel like it's more effective for this application. You can choose whatever you want. And then finally, we have the auto pan. That is, I call it it's like a chop, a volume chop. It's basically essentially an LFO going to our volume. And that's giving us that kind of cool effect. Okay, so that's a basic breakdown of this audio effect rack. Let's see how we can build it. An audio effect rack is essentially taking one audio effect or multiple audio effects and combining them into an audio effect rack. There's 2 ways to go about it, and I'm going to share with you the way that I like to do it. So I'm going to go first and go to my audio effects. I'm going to get my echo. I'm going to get my auto filter, and I'm going to get my auto pan. Now I want to put these in an audio effect rack, and I can simply click on one. While holding shift on my computer, I'm going to go to my auto pan, and as you can see, it will highlight however many devices are in between, it will highlight them all. I can do one of 2 things. I can right click and group them, or hit Command G to group them, and that's going to put it into an audio effect rack. Now I don't see anything yet. I'm just looking at my detail view. I'm going to go to my macros, and this is where I can start mapping. Now the order that you map, how you label, the colors that you choose is completely up to you. So the first parameter that I decided to map, and again, you can decide to do whatever you want, was the dry wet. So all I have to do is right click, map to macro 1, and now you can see that dry wet is mapped. I can right click above the macro and assign any color. I can right click on this tab and also rename it, or hit Command R to do whatever name is suitable to you. The next parameter I like to map is the feedback. The feedback is where we're going to get that intense delay. Anything above 110% will give you that intense delay, and then back it down below 100% for it to gently go away. So here's my feedback. I can right click on my feedback. I can change the color. I can rename it. Put any title that you want suitable for yourself. Now, the next parameter I want to map are my delay times. And you might be asking, why are these changing together? I suggest leaving it in the default mode, but just to kind of explain what's happening here, this is a link button. This link button unifies the left and right channel by linking them. I could turn the link button off, and now I'll have independent delays on my left and right channel, which also yields really awesome results. And please feel free to unlink and map each of these independently. But for today's lesson, I'm going to use my link, I am going to use my time, and I'm going to map that to my macro 3. I can right click, put a color on it. I can right click to rename. I call this pitch, delay, great, and hit enter. All right, the last parameter I have mapped on my echo is the reverb, which I was demonstrating earlier. And I like to use my colors just to make it pop a little bit. So those are the 4 parameters that I have mapped. You can explore your own, other parameters. Those are pretty good. We're not going to demonstrate these, but, something that could be fun is the modulation of the delay or the filter. Could be kind of wild. Check those out on your own. I'm going to double click to fold my echo because I'm now finished with it. You could double click to pop it open, expand it, double click to close it. So let's hear what we have so far. Awesome. So why I have an auto filter after is the sounds can get really intense, and I like to have this control to like kind of filter them in and out. And I was mentioning that I personally like the high pass filter, but as always, this video is just kind of giving you methodology on how to construct this. Ultimately, you're going to take these tools and construct whatever you prefer. And I always want you guys to try things out and make decisions on your own. So let's kind of hear both of these. Let's hear the high pass. Let's hear the low pass. Okay, excuse me, low pass. And then we have our high pass. Both are great candidates, low or high. You can't go wrong with either. I'm gonna pick my high pass filter. I'm gonna map my frequency, and now I can control that up front. You know me, I like my colors by right clicking and putting my colors to make it pop a little bit more. So that's the only parameter that I chose to put on my auto filter. Feel free to try other parameters. Double click to fold it, double click to expand it. And finally, the auto pan is the last audio effect in this chain. And the auto pan is what it sounds like. It will pan the sound. Let's hear it real quick. And essentially what the auto pan does is it has 2 LFOs that are complete opposite phases, which is why we get a left and right panning. So that could be really awesome, and you could just leave it like that. But I prefer a kind of an even volume. It's like an LFO going to volume, and I'm taking away the phase, and we can see now we just have 1 LFO that's pumping the volume up and down. So I like to have the control of the amount. It's kind of like a dry wet, where I can determine the extreme depths of the auto pan from nothing to maximum. So I'm going to use that so I can bring it in and out. Let's hear what that sounds like. And then I like my rate. Notice how I keep on returning to my feedback to have the delay gently fade away by bringing it down below 100%. So the rate is awesome. It controls how fast or slow that LFO is functioning. And lastly, I like my shape, which will give me a sine wave to like a square wave, which will be a little bit more choppy. So I can right click, add it to my shape, put some colors on it, rename it however you want by right clicking and renaming. Let's check out these parameters. Okay, so that's the basics of this audio effect rack. Let's use this on something else just to kind of demonstrate its subtleties and just hear it on another source. I'm just going to set this up. I have this going on an acapella. I've got my dry wet a little bit, my feedback kind of gently. And again, this can go from subtle All right, and now we can go a little bit more intense with the delay. And right now I'm only using my mouse. Imagine if you had a MIDI controller and you mapped these parameters and you had your two hands, how wild this thing can get. Don't forget to rename your audio effect rack. Label it whatever you want. I'll call it crazy delay. And then you can simply save it, and it's going to go into your audio effect rack section. Once you save it, you'll find it. You can go to your audio effects and you'll find it in your audio effect category. And then after that, you might want to, like, for example, this is my sound monitor. You might want to then put it into one of your collections so you can find it quickly. So that concludes this tutorial on building audio effect racks. And the goal of this isn't for you to replicate. I mean, yes, you're going to go through the steps of building what I have offered. Of course, you can download this and use it yourself, the Sound Mana Echo insert. The goal is to hopefully start experimenting and building your own audio effect racks that you can use in your productions and live performances. So experiment, put things together, map parameters to macros, have fun with it, and trust and be patient. If you're not quite understanding why this is important, why it's valuable, I mean, there's a chance it doesn't work for you and it's not for you. For me, as a producer and as a performer, these tools are incredibly powerful and really lead to custom sound design that's unique to me as a producer. And why I love the audio effect rack is it just organizes your workflow. I'm not having to go and find and map and look for these parameters. Everything's just organized in one area, in one rack, and it's just a lot cleaner and a lot more powerful. Thanks for watching. Make sure to download this custom audio effect rack in the link below. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to keep up to date with our music production videos. And make sure to follow us on Instagram at SoundMana and on Facebook at SoundMana.